Hello, welcome to our exclusive interview with me, Hamza Dabcherin. There has been fighting between Ethiopian troops and the Tigray forces for the past few months. How did it start? What are the future plans of both sides? How long this war could last? And will Sudanese Prime Minister efforts to mediate them will be successful? Anwar Abdifatah, who is a geopolitical analyst, joins me in this interview. Anwar, welcome to CBA.
Thanks for having me.
There has been fighting between the federal government troops and Tigray forces in Ethiopia for the past months. Could you remind us a little bit about how this started first?
The war has started in November last year after the Prime Minister Abiy has announced a direct confrontation against the TPLF. So since then, the war was spreading the entire region of Tigray. The Prime Minister Abiy testified that the TDF, Tigray Defense Force, invaded the Northern Command, which locates in Mekelle, and killed non-Tigrayans and collected all the weapons and ammunition. But on the other hand, TPLF has testified that the Abiy doesn't have any mandate because the general election was supposed to take place in August last year, but the government postponed it because of COVID-19. So as a result, the TPLF has orchestrated the local election in September, with the federal government labeled as a shanty election. So that's the driving force behind this direct confrontation.
Is there any security improvement so far?
In my idea, the security is worsening by day, so it's not getting better.
The government said at the start of the war that it would soon eliminate TPLF fighters from the region, and the fighting is still growing and spreading to new areas. What prevented the government from eliminating or defeating TPLF as they have promised before?
I think in hindsight, that was immature decision because Abiy underestimated and also miscalculated. If we look back the history, TPLF was part of the coalition party, which was ruling Ethiopia starting from 1994 up to 2019. So TPLF was the strongest party within the coalition party. So they dominated the military, the intelligence, and also they have a lot of influence across the region. And approximately 250,000 militias have the Tigray force, and the number can increase it, but approximately. So Abiy makes me remind one of the notorious leaders in the world, which is called Hitler. He used to say Jews as animals. So Abiy uses the same demonization by saying TPLF is weak and should be obliterated. So that was a miscalculation and underestimation against his opponent.
When you compare the current and past of security concerns in Ethiopia, how long this war could last, do you think, Anwar?
I think it's unpredictable so far, but it depends if the warring sides, both the federal government and TDF force, should accept negotiation and reconciliation. But so far, it's unpredictable. And the war is spreading the other regions and it's becoming more civil war. So it's unpredictable in a nutshell.
Okay, the government announced a unilateral ceasefire, though Tigrayans declined to accept it. Some people believe this is a clear message of who has the upper hand of the war and the government military plan is failing. What's your take on this?
I think the war started in November 04 and the coalition force, including Ethiopia National Defense Force and Eritrean force, together entered Mekelle, the capital of Tigray region, in 28 November. And the presence of the coalition force in the Tigray region, enormous human rights violations have been witnessed, including rape, torture, castigation, displacement. So TDF force have retaken the capital of Mekelle in June this year. So Abiy, as a smart and devilish way, he announced a unilateral ceasefire, but TDF force have rejected, and every single day is advancing and conquering new areas. So I can say the decision of the government is a kind of saving face saving decision, but practicality, the coalition force have lost the battle against TDF.
So why do you think that Tigranians are rejecting to accept or to reach agreement, a ceasefire agreement with the federal government troops?
I think TPLF has a surreptitious agenda. Maybe they are going finally to announce a self-determination. On the other hand, it can be a political tool which can give them a strong position for negotiation. Yeah.
Tigray claims regaining most of their territory. Is it possible for Tigray to regain power and rule Ethiopia again?
You know, everything is possible in Ethiopia. If we look back the history, TPLF was established in 1974 after the former Prime Minister Mengistu Haile Mariam overthrown Haile Selassie. So since then, they announced an all or nothing attack against the Dergi regime led by the former Prime Minister Mengistu Haile Mariam. So after 17 years of struggle, in 1991, TPLF ousted the Dergi regime. So as a result, everything is possible. But in Ethiopia, generally, there is a culture which one community prevails others and lead the country under iron fist. So there has no any political peaceful transfer except the 2018 one, where the former Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn transferred the power to Abiy.
Some people believe this was not limited to the government forces and Tigranians, but it is all about ethnic power sharing conflicts between the Amhara and Tigranians. Could that argument be possible?
I agree with that idea enormously, because in 1889, when Menelik II announced that he is the emperor and the king of Abyssinia, including Ethiopia and the present Eritrea, since then, Amhara was dominated Ethiopia's politics. And 1897, during the second scramble for Africa, the British special envoy to Ethiopia wrote, met with the Menelik II and gave extreme power to Menelik. So since then, Menelik belongs to Amhara. So since then, Amhara used to oppress, undermine other cultures, other communities. So they extolled the language, their culture, and denied others. In 1913, when Menelik II has died, 5 years of Oromo leadership led by Ligiasu. He was an Oromo and Muslim. After 5 years, the Amhara rebelled to his rule, and they finally arrested and killed in prison in Harod. So Haile Selassie inherited that culture of patronizing and denying other cultures. So Amhara and Tigray consider each other as an arch enemy. So Amhara created a culture of us and them. So there is a long-standing animosity among them. So I agree with you enormously that this war is all about community or communal violence, and there has been a two parallel ideology which compete all the time, which means ethnocentralism, believed by Amhara, and cultural relativism, believed by the rest, including Tigray.
Okay, recently the central government has mobilized troops from other regional administrations to take part in this war against Tigray. Why the government needs new troops now?
I think it's clear that the coalition force lost the battle. So Abiy is scratching his last card by mobilizing troops from the other regions. Already Amhara sent ill-trained force to the battle. The Somali region also sent a troops to the front line as cannon fodder. So with all this mobilization, TPLF is still advancing and conquering new areas. So it seems the mission yet is impossible.
How much hope is there for these new troops to win the war?
I don't think they will defeat it, but it rather will increase the fighting and the communal violence, and the country is becoming more fragile than ever.
Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok expected to mediate between the two sides. Do you think it is the right time to reconcile them and will end up with progress?
I think reconciliation at any time is commendable, and this time the federal government, led by Prime Minister Abiy, is ready to reconcile the dissenting voice. So I commend and urge both of them to accept the mediation pioneered by the Prime Minister Hamdok. And if the war continues, no one will prevail, neither the government or the federal force or the Tigray.
Apart from the war between the government and Tigray, there is another one between Afar and the Somalis. Can't it be said that the country is becoming more and more divided into ethnicity?
Yes, indeed. The conflict between Afar and Somalis started in 2014 and centered in three areas or Kabbalah, which the inhabitants are Somali ethnic, especially Isa Kala. But the recent one erupted when the Afar militias attacked and killed more than 300 civilians. It was naked aggression and massacre tended by the Afar militias. So that is a kind of communal violence, and since then, spontaneous protests against the brutality of the Afar militias have started in all the Somali region, demanding the current government, led by Mustafa Omar, to react such brutality.
Somali Ethiopians called on their leader to intervene these Somali-Afar ethnic conflicts and defend his people, telling that pregnant women and children were killed. What can President Mustafa Akcha can do about this?
Personally, I'm not a warmonger, but everyone who commits a crime should be accountable. And the Somali region is headed by Mustafa, the president, so he should react such brutality tended by the armed to the teeth Afar militias.
Okay, Anwar, what's the future of Ethiopia now, do you think? Where Ethiopia is going to?
I think the future is amorphous and bleak, but I suggest the warring sides, the federal force and the Tigray force, to accept unconditionally the ceasefire and the mediation pioneered by Prime Minister Hamdok as a shuttle diplomat, and Abiy, the incumbent Prime Minister, should resign sooner rather than later, and transitional government will be established, and all the dissenting voice and the political stakeholders should be accommodated, and a new leader takes the lead.
Okay, that was Anwar Abdifatah, who is a geopolitical analyst, joining us in this exclusive interview with me, Hamza Dabcheri. Thank you very much.